What up? It's your boy Tom, and it's Wednesday, my dudes. You know what that means. Just got a quick update on the True Draco Monarch list. We've added 3 copies of Droll to the side deck here. We took out a copy of Domain because it seems to be the Monarch card that I play the least in most matchups. We also took out the 3rd copy of Maiden. We don't really need it. And also the Metaltron, which, yeah, was a haha funny card. Nobody really expects it. And certain decks just can't deal with it on their own. But we're getting a little more serious here. Just because I lost to Drytron at locals last Thursday. One of my locals, 2 different players brought Drytron. I beat one of them, but then in the final round, I went up against a second Drytron player, and I just got absolutely bodied. And I ended up getting 2nd place. So we're just going to talk about that real quick. I know somebody did request a little discussion about the side deck here. I believe they're having trouble figuring out what cards to side out. So if you're siding in a Monarch card, you'll just want to trade that essentially for one of your 10 Monarch cards here. Typically, you want to keep this package somewhere around 9 to 10 cards, so Pantheism remains alive. Other than that, though, the rest of these cards, it is going to be a little bit of a different story. The Droll and Lockbird and the Inspector Border, they are monsters, and at the end of the day, we are playing a Demise deck, so you will want to keep your monster count low. And even though Encamo Fright can be activated in the Pendulum scale, there are times where you end up drawing things like Encamo Fright, Duality, Erupt, or Stormforth, in which case, or Demise actually. So you're going to come across scenarios where sometimes one of these cards is going to be dead in combination with the others. So even though Encamo Fright is a great card, especially great for consistency, you actually may want to consider siding it out if you're siding in more monsters. But typically, you would want to avoid siding out consistency cards when you're trying to put in more hate against the deck you're going up against. But in this particular case, it's actually recommended to side out maybe not all 3 of them, but 1 or 2 copies of it. Just because out of all of the consistency cards that you have, technically it is the least useful. And then in terms of this Mind Drain here, this is just against Virtual World. It seems like just about every tournament I go to, and there's like 5 different locals that I go to, but it's always just half of the entire tournament is just Virtual World. Just everybody's playing it. If it's not the same in your area, wherever you play at, you may want to consider playing a different card in your side deck, but Virtual World is a very scary matchup for this deck, so having Mind Drain is very useful. But in terms of most other decks, you really don't have to overside into anything. The main reason why we included the Droll and Lockbird here is just a little extra added insurance against Drytron, because if we go first against Drytron, normal summon Border is usually a death sentence against most hands. If we're going second, though, the only way that we out an ultimateness that has already hit the board is by specifically opening at least 1 of these traps and 1 True Draco monster. This will be able to out ultimateness because it can't negate trap card effects. It can only negate activations. So you can just set this, tribute summon over it, and you can out the ultimateness. But if you don't draw specifically a combination of your monsters and 1 of your traps, you're just dead. So since this deck isn't maining any hand traps, just go ahead and make room for 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird, 4 Drytron, or other combo decks that have similar playstyle to that. In terms of the Imperial Order, that's just a good card. If you're just wanting to side that in, you can just side that in for the tenacity, really. And then that's really all the interactions that you have. As long as you're siding in a Monarch card, it's fine. Just trade Monarch card for Monarch card. These other cards you'll typically want to cut down on monsters. And then in terms of consistency cards, don't ever side out Duality. If you're playing against a less aggressive deck, it's okay to side out a Waterfall. It's okay to side out a Maiden against those less aggressive decks. And then, say, for your spells and traps here, you want to be careful. You want to see these really often, which is why, against fairly widely accepted rules of deck building, you actually would be siding out some of your consistency cards here occasionally. I would actually unironically recommend doing that over siding some of these out, but in certain matchups, you may be able to side out like one copy of Heritage or one copy of Disciples. You'd prefer to keep 3 Disciples against grindier decks. You'd prefer to keep 3 Heritage against more aggressive decks. And then in terms of Return and Apocalypse, it's just which effect do you prefer against more aggressive decks that can go for game in one turn. Apocalypse's effect is going to be a lot better. And then if it's a more grindy game, you'll want to keep 3 Return. But with this side deck here, you're not going to be oversiding too often. Not including the Monarch cards. Typically only be siding 3 cards. If you find yourself siding more than this, that's not really what you want to be doing in the first place. But just make sure not to overside, and you'll be able to find room. Siding in monsters, you can side in again. You can side out the Encamophytes. You can side in just like one copy here or there of the less useful version of one of your engine cards, and then that's really it as far as siding is concerned. Just for an example, say we're going up against Striker, we'll want to side in 3 copies of Strike of the Monarchs. It's really good against control decks, especially Striker, because it allows you to play around their Widow Anchor, which is probably one of their best cards against you. So you can just side that in, just trade it for the Stormforth, because the Stormforth isn't going to be useful. This is for going up against decks like Virtual World or decks that play Dragoon. So you just side out the 3 Stormforth, side in the 3 Strike, and then say you also want to hit them with the Imperial Order, you can just side out the Tenacity, or you can side out 1 Heritage, or you can side out 1 Apocalypse, 1 Encamophyte. You just do any of that. And against a deck, say like Drytron, say we're going first, we just want to side in the border. That's going to increase our monster count. We want to keep it low because of Demise. You could side out 1 or 2 Encamophyte, and then you could also side out just, say, 1 Waterfall, or maybe 1 Disciples. Just something along those lines. So guys, that's going to be it. Thanks for watching. Make sure to stay tuned for more content. I think this is probably going to be the last video in a while for True Draco. I'm going to continue playing it, but there's not a whole lot more I want to talk about. I may do a gameplay video of this eventually, but for the immediate future, I'm going to be working on showing you guys some decks that we built for $20 that we will be dueling each other with. And then also make sure to watch out for more shorts. We're going to be putting more of those up. And then beyond that, I will be collaborating with Kuya Goldlink again. We're probably going to do some sort of fun duel video, so make sure to stay tuned for that. Subscribe for more weekly content. Make sure to like the video. If True Draco best deck, let's get Masterpiece back to 3. Let's go. See you next week.